Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wolterman Homestead. We are superbly excited this week
Superbly.
on the support this week's Torah portion. I can't even talk today,
It's a
so
good
please forgive me in advance. But this week we will be covering. This week is called Shemot. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I was pronouncing it Shemot, and then I was corrected by my beautiful wife. But in this week's Torah portion, the Torah this week is Exodus chapter 11.
No.
1. Sorry, I think I need to get
So there'll be a
glasses.
link down in the description where you can click on it and go look for yourself. But so the Torah portion, Shemot, it is portion number 13, and Shemot means names. So the Torah portion is Exodus chapter 1, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. And then you have the prophet section of Isaiah chapter 27, verse 6 through chapter 28, verse 13. And then you have chapter 29, verses 22 through 23. And then the gospel section is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 12.
Beautiful.
So we're going to get started this evening. I think Exodus is it's such a beautiful book. I love it. There's so much in it.
It's like an action thriller. That's what I got when I read it. But before we go, I just wanted to always reach out to people and say thank you to our fellowship, our friends, our audiences that follow us. We love you guys. We really appreciate the time that people take in their busy day to watch us. And we are excited to come along with join us this week.
Yeah, we enjoy spending Shabbat with you. So, I'm going to read Exodus chapter 1 and then chapter 2 down to, what is that, like verse 10? Yeah, chapter 2, verse 10. Read all of that because it's just really, really good. And then Dylan is going to read the gospel section. So, grab your Bibles and come read with us, and then we'll kind of midrash and talk about it.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. So our Bibles are the complete Jewish Bible simply because it's just the translation that we really like. But you feel free to grab whatever translation you like and that you're able to understand and digest. These are the names of the son of Israel who came into Egypt with Yaakov. Each man came with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. All told, there were 70 descendants of Yaakov. Joseph was already in Egypt. Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. The descendants of Israel were fruitful, increased abundantly, multiplied, and grew very powerful. The land became filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt. He knew nothing about Joseph, but said to his people, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become a people too numerous and powerful for us. Come, let's use wisdom in dealing with them. Otherwise, they'll continue to multiply, and in the event of war, they might ally themselves with our enemies and fight against us and leave the land altogether." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built for Pharaoh the storage cities of Pithom and Ramesses. But the more the Egyptians oppressed them, the more they multiplied and expanded, until the Egyptians became to dread the people of Israel and worked them relentlessly, making their lives bitter with hard labor, digging clay, making bricks, all kinds of field work, and in all this toil they were shown no mercy. Moreover, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of them who was called Shiphrah, and the other Puah. When you attend a Hebrew woman and see them giving birth, he said, if it's a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live. However, the midwives were God-fearing women. So they didn't do as the king of Egypt ordered and let the boys live. The king of Egypt summoned the midwives and demanded of them, "Why have you done this and let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "It's because the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women. They go into labor and give birth before the midwife arrives." Therefore, God prospered the midwives, and the people continued to multiply and grow very powerfully. Indeed, because the midwives feared God, he made them founders of families. I love it.
I know. That's what I love.
Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: "Every boy that is born, throw into the river, but let the girls live."
Beautiful.
There's so many good things there.
Yes.
So chapter 2. A man from the family of Levi took a woman, also descended from Levi, as his wife. When she conceived and had a son, upon seeing what a fine child he was, she hid him for 3 months. When she could no longer hide him, she took a papyrus basket, coated it with clay and tar, and put the child in it, and placed it among the reeds on the riverbank. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the river, while her handmaids were attending, walking alongside the river. Spotting the basket among the reeds, she sent the slave girl to meet it. She opened it and looked inside, and there in front of her was a crying baby boy. Moved with pity, she said, "This must be one of the Hebrews' children." At this point, his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Would you like me to go and find one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes, go." So the girl went and called the baby's own mother. Pharaoh's daughter told her, "Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will pay you for doing it." So the woman took the child and nursed it. Then when the child was grown some, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and she began to raise him as her own son. She called him Moses, which means pull out, explaining, "Because I pulled him out of the water."
So beautiful.
I love it.
Love that.
Love it all.
If that doesn't overcome or send you don't get the spiny sensation, I don't know what does. But what are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? I have
There's
so
probably
many.
not many, right?
Just a couple. So I love how Shemot means names. And so I love whenever I read the Bible and it talks about a character, I love to look up their name in the Hebrew. And so several years ago, I looked up these midwives' names, Puta and Shafira. And they mean splendid and fine, they're radiant, beautiful names. But how they were obedient to God. They knew not to harm God's children and his people. And that God made them founders of families. And as I read this, and I think I maybe talked about it last week, I don't remember. It's been a thought of mine at least. Sorry, I'm uncomfortable. But we can go back to Genesis chapter 15.
Yeah.
When when Abraham is talking with God and God is making a covenant with Abraham. And he says, "I will make you numerous as the stars, the sand of the earth." And he says, "Your people will be in a foreign country for a certain amount of time and they will be captives there. And then when they leave, they will plunder that nation." And we see it come to pass in Exodus 14:15, right after Passover, and they leave Egypt. And that when they leave Egypt, they take Egyptians with them.
Yeah.
And it's that beautiful fulfillment that God always allows outsiders into his chosen people.
Yes, and we are all God's or Adonai's children.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we forget that, and I think it's important. I love that you said that, because it shouldn't matter where we come from or who we are, but we are all Adonai's children, and he is always there for us.
Yeah.
But I thought last night, I was doing my studies, and I just have I remember the first time when we had our kids, and Megan had told me about a midwife.
When we had Evelyn.
I had, and this is my personal experience, but I had no idea at the time, what a midwife was, what their job was. But as she explained it to me, and I learned, and I read, and then here, fast forward to the present, reading the Shemot and this in Exodus, like I was overcome last night with just feelings of like such great appreciation for what they do. The midwives are such a pinnacle symbol, but it's just the respect in what they do. And like I thought about today, here we are having our soon to be beautiful little one, as we call it.
Yeah, our rainbow baby.
And just talking with our midwife, and just it melts my heart, because the care that they provide, that just the level of experience that they offer is just amazing. But most importantly for me, I look at the story in Exodus, and I look at how it was in the past and then today. Like, we look at our systems that we have in place, and in a realistic sense, we are all, a lot of people know what pharmakeia is, and
not necessarily.
Okay, I shouldn't have said that, excuse me, but I think our audience will understand where I'm getting at. But like, midwives, like you look at the Pharaoh, he gave an order to them to not let the boys live, and only the girls. That's not in their blood, that's not in their DNA. They honored what Adonai wishes were for them to live. And I kind of reflected on today, like midwives, there's kind of that, there's two different paths. Like, people, like I looked at the story of Exodus, trying to say this in the best manner.
Word it as possible.
Yeah.
When you have, how about we word it this way? When you have experienced the opportunity of giving birth in a hospital,
Yes.
and in the pharmacy world, you get to see that. And then when you get to have a home birth, and when you get to have the care of a midwife and her team, it's a totally different experience. And it is amazing how God designed our bodies, and when we use and listen and use the training, it's just a different experience. And to see the women being faithful to how God, wanted birth to be.
But,
and I'm not saying that like hospital birth is a horrible thing either. I just personally didn't have good experiences.
But I also, what really also reminded me of like not only what midwives do, but also what women do. They carry our beautiful children for 9 months, and then they go through
all of the labor,
and
everything.
But it just makes me appreciate what women do, but the beautifulness that comes from that, the natural side of that. I think me speaking from a husband and guy aspect, we don't think about those things, but it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I love reading that part and thinking about those things.
Yeah, their faithfulness.
Yeah.
So our Bible has a footnote, because when we look back at last week's Torah portion, you see Joseph, who has this really great relationship with Pharaoh. And so in verse 8 here, it says, a new king arose. So the Hebrew word for new here is yada. It defined as having an intimate knowledge. The Targum reads that the new king did not maintain the decree of Joseph, nor did he keep up with prior royal policy of upholding a good relationship with the tribes of Israel and Goshen. And then, like, for me personally, I see like the Antichrist spirit kind of coming over him and suppressing God's people. I mean, we can see it throughout history and multiple different individuals.
Yes,
But
it's just absolutely. But highly encourage it, reaching out to our friends and audience. Please continue reading the Exodus.
Yeah, the rest of the chapters.
Week. I think there's so many beautiful things in there, and
so I have just a couple more little
go
nuggets.
ahead.
Because I read more of chapter 2 because I like chapter 2.
Oh,
so I will leave a link down in the description of a blog that I wrote last year, probably, of the phrase of put it in a basket. And this is what Yahweh is doing when she's putting Moses in the basket. And she's like giving him, she doesn't know what's going to happen, but she knows that she serves a faithful God. And how God used her faithfulness to release his nation and to write the Bible and just to do beautiful things as we continue on in scripture. But what is interesting is the basket that is used here. In the Hebrew, that is the same word. It's used twice as Noah's Ark. So, just a fun little tidbit whenever you read and look at like different words and things in the Hebrew. So, I think that's kind of what I got. Otherwise, I'll just keep Hebrew.
I'm glad you mentioned chapter 2 because I just love the very end. I think it brings joy to my heart just to read it.
Oh,
but what Moses means, it means to pull out. I mean, that is just fantastic. It's powerful.
It's such a name for him because he pulls the people out of slavery, out of oppression, out of Egypt, and into the promised land. He doesn't get to go into the promised land. Yes. Joshua does. Yep. But he gets to pull the people and pull them closer to Adonai. And I just think that's so beautiful. So, we're going to stop at that because we can keep going.
Yeah, we can keep going. But with that, we're going to continue on to Matthew.
Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 12.
Alrighty. After Yeshua was born in Bethlehem in the land of Judah during the time when Herod was king, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews? For we saw this star in the east and have come to worship him." Nope, sorry. When King Herod heard of this, he became very agitated, and so did everyone else in Jerusalem. He called together all the head Kahan and Torah teachers of the people and asked them, "Where will the Messiah be born?" "In Bethlehem of Judah," they replied, "because the prophet wrote, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For from you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people, Israel.'" Herod summoned the Magi to meet with him privately and asked them exactly when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem with these instructions: "Search carefully for the child, and when you find him, let me know so that I too may go and worship him." After they had listened to the king, they went away, and the star which they had seen in the east was in front of them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Upon entering the house, they saw the child with his mother, Miriam, and they prostrated themselves and worshipped him. Then they opened their bags and presented him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But they had been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, so they took another route back to their own country.
So many things. So many things. Oh, it's just so good. Like I had mentioned, that Antichrist spirit that settled on Pharaoh and the fear of the people. You see Herod having it too, of, wanting to take out God's chosen. And then verse 2, where it says, "For we saw a star in the east and have come to worship him," that goes back to Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. And it is another prophecy of the star coming and Yeshua being appointed and just everything with all that's really beautiful. So go read that. Go check out that little nugget.
So
Do you want to read this at all?
I had thought about it. I had
The big purple note.
saw that. So we're gonna read a little bulletin here. Anti-Jewish.
So it's
It's
this
in our
big
Bible.
purple or blue.
It kind of
block.
explains in deeper detail what some of we're talking about. But it's anti-Jewish scriptural interpretations. The Magi replaced the Jews as first recipients of good news. In Matthew 2, 1 through 12, despite the prophetic nature of Matthew 2, certain Jewish scholars incorrectly conclude that this is the first anti-Semitic assertion of the New Testament, where God chose the Magi, presumably Gentiles, over his covenant people Israel, in presenting the Jewish Messiah. Jewish scholar Amy Jill Levine points out Matthew's second chapter has been read as a foreshadow of the Passion, in which evil Jews persecute the righteous while good Gentiles seek their well-being. Historically, Christian theologians have mistakenly insisted that the term Magi was used as the name for priests and wise men among the Medo-Persians and Babylonians. These persons were supposed to be adept in the search learning, which in remote antiquity had its seat in Egypt and later in Chaldea, from which latter fact that they were often called Chaldeans. Most Christian scholarship thus argues that the Magi were Gentiles and of pagan origin. However, recent biblical scholarship and archaeological evidence has proven that the Magi were neither Gentiles nor astrologers, but in fact were Jewish sages. That is really big.
That's interesting.
As noted by Chalcedon, Babylon was still the place of residence for the majority of the Jewish community, even as Matthew was writing in his first century. Of the origin of these Magi, scholars agree that they were linked to the prophet Daniel near 500 BC, who is the diaspora waited for the time of return and restoration of Israel. Some have even speculated that these wise men came from a Jewish school that went back to Daniel's day, where the prophets looked to the heavens for the promised arrival of the Messiah. The star in the east was in fact a manifestation of Adonai Shekinah,
which
divine
means
presence, marking the arrival of the Son of Man. The Jewish Midrash Agat Mashiach Bet Ha-Midrash remarks, this is the star of the Messiah, and it will abide in the east 15 days, and if it tarries longer, it will be the good of Israel. As to the accusation that God providing revelation to the Magi is anti-Semitic, this is refuted in the wise men of the east were in fact Jewish sages awaiting the arrival of Israel's Messiah.
Very interesting. Yeah, because that's what I always think whenever I think of the Magi's. I think of Daniel being in Babylon and just, the people being enslaved there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, they studied the stars. They studied so many things that God created.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything else that stands out?
I don't, I mean, I look at, and that's something I would love to dive into further in my studies. Like, Babylon was a critical place, and there's so many things that happened in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many key points, but I am just so blessed to be able to
sit and study with you? Spend time with you?
spend time with each other, spend time with Yeshua, most importantly, and glorifying Him in everything we do. And I think that's all that we have tonight, unless you have anything to add.
No, I think that's it.
But we just can't say it enough, or maybe I can't, because my heart is full of love. I love giving thanks to the people and making time for them, and as you guys make time for us to read this week's Torah portion. So may Adonai bless you and bestow blessings on you. And as we always say,
Yeah, so I want to cut you
Oh,
off. I want to
okay.
cut you off a side swipe. But if you have any prayer requests
Yes.
or any Bible nuggets or anything that stood out to you, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. We will try to interact with you as best as we can. If you don't want to drop your prayer request in the comment, you're more than welcome to send us an email, and we will be praying over whatever that might be. But we are praying over each and every single one of you.
Absolutely.
So with that, may Adonai bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you, and may he give you his shalom. Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat shalom.
from the Wolterman Homestead to you.
Love you guys.
Take care. And now you hear the puppies?
I know.